Well, if you ask me to bet on it tonight, Sunday afternoon, he'll be in Auburn. I'm in Mississippi. I hear all the inside stuff. That's close to being a done deal. Now, I'm not saying it's signed contract yet, but they're gonna give him what he wants, and he wants $100 million in 10 years, and Auburn's ready to give it to him.
What's up, everybody? Welcome into the Phillip Jordan Show. I am your host, Phillip Jordan from Last Word on College Football, where I cover the Auburn Tigers, and 96.9 The Legend in Dothan, Alabama, where I'm the in-studio host and producer, Dothan Woods Football. Got a jam-packed show for you guys today. Of course, I'm going to be joined by Coach Max Howell. We are going to recap and discuss everything that happened in the SEC and college football in Week 12 that I thought was going to be a very boring weekend in college football, but that turned out not to be true. Also talk about some rumors around Auburn and the latest on the head coaching search. Some interesting stuff came out on Monday evening. Don't know if it's true or not. Don't know if any of this is true, but some interesting stuff to say the least. And like I said, it was a very interesting weekend in college football, so I'm going to just kind of give my overall look on how the college football playoff rankings could look on Tuesday evening. Before we jump into everything, though, remember you can follow me on social media at PJordanSEC. The podcast is available on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, just wherever you get your podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. It means a lot if you do that. Leave a review. I will read it on a future edition of the show. You can check the show out over on YouTube. Just if you're on YouTube right now checking out, of course, you say, where's the video? This episode is an audio-only edition, so just bear with me here on this one if you're on YouTube. But if you're on YouTube, Phillip Jordan Show YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for all notifications, and leave a comment on a video, and I'll read that on a future edition of the show. And you can also email me at sports.philipjordan@gmail.com. So let's jump into it. So the plan originally was I was going to give just some thoughts on college football, because just kind of behind the scenes here on the show, a pre-record usually at 6 o'clock on Monday evenings with Coach Max Howell. Then I'll record the rest of the show around me and Coach's conversation. So we already recorded that. So I was like, okay. So probably what I would do, I was going to just go over some other college football stuff that me and Coach would talk about. Like I said, kind of my thoughts on how the playoff rankings should look, and who's kind of still in the race with everything that happened on Saturday. But then as I was kind of formulating those thoughts and what's going on with that, then some reports, more rumors, more speculation was hitting hard on social media when it pertains to the Auburn head coaching search, and more importantly, when it comes to Lane Kiffin. Of course, Ole Miss lost to Arkansas, and we'll talk about the game with Coach Howell when I have him on. They lost to Arkansas 42-27. It was 42-6 at one point. Ole Miss did score 21 points in the fourth quarter. They had a lot of yardage in that game. Both running backs, Zach Evans and Quinshon Judkins, had over 200 yards, but still, it was a lopsided affair for most of the game against Arkansas. So, like I said, as I was getting ready to kind of get the rest of the show recorded, a report came out. Now, like you said, it's one report. This could be completely false. Tomorrow we could wake up and Lane Kiffin could sign a new contract with Ole Miss, which reportedly he has been offered. That is out there. If I get mispronounced the guy's name, I apologize. But John Sokoloff, who is the WCBE, he's a sports reporter, news, Northeast Mississippi. He put out the tweet on Monday evening. Hashtag Ole Miss head coach Lane Kiffin plans to step down as the Rebels head coach Friday and head to Auburn to become the Tigers' next head coach, according to sources. Sources say the Tigers haven't officially offered a job to anyone yet, so Lane to Auburn is happening. Story soon. Lane quote tweeted it and said, "That's news to me, John." He put the facepalm emoji up there, and then nice sources. And also, Lane Kiffin also took a Word document he actually posted up on Twitter, and it was quite funny too as well. So Lane Kiffin, and in the story, that was reported here that talked about where Ole Miss has denied that this is happening. But anyways, Lane Kiffin puts this up. This just in. Breaking news. John Sokoloff of hashtag WCBI News in Starkville, Mississippi plans to step down as lead anchor and head to hashtag WLOX to become their new lead anchor. Sources say WLOX hasn't offered a job to anyone yet. So John to WLOX is happening. Story soon. So obviously throwing some shade, trolling at the report. But this has been from the start. Auburn has made it clear that Lane Kiffin was their number one target. That was the guy that this program they were going to go after. That John Cohen was the guy. Brandon Marcello from 247 Sports, of course, people who follow Auburn know he used to cover Auburn over at Auburn Undercover. And other places before that, SEC Country, before he was with 247 Sports. So he was the first one to say that Lane Kiffin was the main target. And it looks like from the start, Lane Kiffin has been the guy that Auburn has been going after. And I have said this, Auburn's big game hunting. They are looking for a big name, someone to can really take this program into a different direction. Brian Harsin was a mistake. We all know that. We've seen that. But obviously, when you've seen the names, Lane Kiffin was one. Deion Sanders was a name that had been brought up. Hugh Freeze was one name. You saw Dan Lanning. There's some other stuff out there, some other big name coaches mentioned, but it has seemed from the start that Lane Kiffin has been the number one target for Auburn to be their next head football coach. So with this story coming up, now I'm not saying Lane Kiffin's going to Auburn. I'm not hopping on here and saying this guy is confirming it. I'm not going to jump to that conclusion. But it wouldn't be surprising because it's been evident as we've seen it that Lane Kiffin's been their top guy that they want to go after. And then Lane Kiffin hasn't necessarily done a great job of putting the fire out with these rumors. He didn't do a great job of it Saturday night after the game, making a comment, well, I might not be the number one target after that first half. He said then, and he has said on Monday too, he is happy at Ole Miss. That's where he wants to be. Or not. Well, he didn't say that's where he wants to be. Let me backtrack what I just said. He did not say that, but he said he's happy at Ole Miss. He talked about the future, where they were at when he got there versus where they are at now. He made a pine box joke, and for a younger audience who may not know what that reference is, basically when Tommy Tuberville was coaching Ole Miss, of course he went to Auburn. When the rumors were coming out or speculation that he was a candidate for the Auburn job, then he said the only way, and I'm paraphrasing, this is not word for word what Tommy Tuberville said. He said, the only way I'm leaving here is you have to carry me out of a pine box. So now Lane Kiffin making that joke. Now, obviously, he's denying this here. So it's going to be an interesting next couple of days. I will say this, and as I got Ross about Auburn, covers his team closely, follows his team closely. If Lane Kiffin's going to be the coach, that's a big hire. I'll just say that start off. Because if Lane Kiffin is the next Auburn coach, I believe in a year or two he can rebuild them into an SEC West contender because of what he's able to do in a transfer portal. And Auburn needs some. I've said that from the start when Brian Harsin got fired. Even before Brian Harsin got fired, whoever the next coach at Auburn, it needs somebody that's really good at portal because they're going to rebuild this roster. I mean, that's evident when you watch Auburn play. And they've done good things, really great things these last few weeks with Cadillac Williams at head coach. They really look like a different team, different energy, more passion, playing harder, just all that stuff. And it's equal to a 2-1 record over those games with wins over Texas A&M, Western Kentucky, and then that almost win, overtime loss against Mississippi State. And then also there's, you've seen it, it's been all over the internet, the NIL situation there at Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin hasn't been happy about that. He's made his opinions heard over the NIL situation, not necessarily Ole Miss, just NIL in general. And also when he lost his defense coordinator, DJ Durkin, who went to A&M because he got outbid. And just everything you read, you hear, and this is all rumors and speculation, nothing's really confirmed or official, obviously. But that Auburn, seems like Auburn, if they're going to go get Lane Kiffin, and that they're putting the money up. And you'll hear that from Coach Howell in our conversation. Like I said, we recorded that at 6 o'clock on Monday evening. And Coach Howell is in Mississippi. He's got connections. He hears things. He knows stuff that's going on. So you'll hear that in our conversation. So this is not the only time to talk about this. But I will say this. I think it's disrespectful to Cornell Cadillac Williams if you do bring Lane Kiffin on Friday. If this report is true, which, like I said, Lane Kiffin's denied, Ole Miss is denied it. But if it's true, let's just play in that arena. If this is true, what's going to happen? That's disrespectful for Auburn to allow this to happen. If he becomes and named the head coach on Friday, and of course, Ole Miss, Mississippi State play on Thursday, it kind of steals the moment away from Cornell Williams. To lead Auburn Tigers into Tuscaloosa in the Iron Bowl, one final time for Cornell Williams. Potentially, hey, they upset them, they're playing a bowl game. If Lane Kiffin or whoever the head coach is going to be named this weekend, it needs to be after the Iron Bowl. That needs to wait. They don't need to release this information or announce this before that game, just because what Cadillac has done for Auburn, and this is his moment. So that's kind of where I am on this. I'm not getting behind this microphone and saying, hey, Lane Kiffin's going to be the next head coach at Auburn. But this is the news we are getting on Monday. Now, who knows what the news will be? Now, it's 9 o'clock Central Time when I'm recording this part. Of course, this is going to drop on Tuesday morning. The original plan was Monday, but with this information, just wanted to wait and put the podcast out, gather my thoughts on what's going on here. So we'll see. Stay updated for me on Twitter at PJordanSCC. We will have a story up if this happens. Whoever the next Auburn coach, we'll have a story up on Last Word on College Football with it as well. I'm gearing up to be ready to put out anything when Auburn does hire the next head coach, especially if it does turn out to be Lane Kiffin. The Egg Bowl is going to be interesting on Thursday night. Of course, middle of the day, Wednesday, we'll release the pick show with Matt Lowe from lowdownsports.com. So that's kind of where we're at. I wanted to open up talking about Lane Kiffin and the recent rumors and speculation and conversation and reports about it. So we'll see where this goes. So now I'm going to play my conversation I had earlier on Monday evening with Coach Max Howell, and then I will give my thoughts on what the college football playoffs could look like and who are the contenders now after what we saw this past Saturday. So here is my conversation with Coach Max Howell. Everybody joining right now, as he does every week, is Coach Max Howell, Troy Sports Hall of Famer, former Ole Miss and Florida State assistant coach, 25-plus years in Sports Talk Radio. And Coach Howell, I appreciate you coming on. When I had you on last week, I don't know if I said this on there, off the air, I was not looking forward to Week 12 in the SEC or college football as a whole. I said this off air. I should have known better, but it was quite an interesting week in college football.
And not only in the SEC, how about all over? How about the top five? And I think two things jumped out at me. One was of course, the Tennessee South Carolina game. I'm sure we'll talk a little bit about that a little bit later. But that jumped a little interesting side note to that. My daughter is a huge South Carolina fan. She lives in Columbia, and her husband went to the University of Tennessee. So that's a split sense. So from that game, I'm watching it on TV. They're sitting in the stadium with their phone on to me. So I get the full recap, play-by-play from her with all the noise around it. So that was the first time I'd ever had a chance to do that. But it was quite interesting there. Of course, some other really topics. One, first of all, we didn't get a chance to see Alabama. Not many people did. They were just kind of a pedestrian game, 34-0 over Austin Peay, and not really trying to show anything, I'm sure, getting ready for the Iron Bowl coming up. Another real highlight, though, was TCU in that field goal with 15 seconds to go. And not so much that the guy could kick the field goal and make it, but the way they worked that. I mean, it had to have been a practice play, because if you notice right down when it was time to make the change, the whole offense sprinted off, and the whole kicking team, It was like 15 seconds left on the clock. And before they got it kicked, it was down to like 3 seconds. And, of course, they won by 1 point to a team that I thought they could probably beat. I thought they'd beat Baylor worse than that. So, anyway, that was kind of the highlight. But you can't dismiss what happened with Michigan, Ohio State. I mean, just look at it. And, of course, the Tennessee situation, remember 2 weeks ago they were number 1 in the country. They fell to number 11 after just having, of course, they lost the starting quarterback. Looks like he's out at least for the last ball game. So I hope it doesn't affect his NFL draft status. But I'll tell you, I've seen number 2 play, their second quarterback at Tennessee. That kid he's a monster. First snap he played against Kentucky, I think he threw the ball 67 yards in the air. And he's a big kid, runs a 4.4. And I think he's a prototype of what the new quarterback situation is going to emerge, by the way. And, of course, we got distraction. Ole Miss loses to Arkansas. Not close at all. They pick it up a little bit in the second half. But in the first couple of minutes of the third quarter, they're behind 42-6. Nobody, I think, saw that coming. And then, of course, Auburn, playing on emotion again. I thought did very, very well. So against Western Kentucky, they got theirs in. So I think throughout the Southeast, it was better than we expected. Because I agreed with you. I thought last weekend would be kind of dull and just mellow. Everybody just kind of sit back. But a lot of close ball games. I think some of the teams must have thought that too, the way they played. But anyway, that was last weekend, and we ready to take on really the competition for in-state rivals, and particularly with the Iron Bowl and the Egg Bowl coming up.
Yeah, it's always interesting. This actually may have been one of the more entertaining weekends of the entire year. And then, me and you weren't the only ones that weren't looking forward to it. A lot of people were kind of like, okay, this is.
I think some of the players fit in that same category.
And a team you didn't mention there, which I know they're this is not two teams that are competing for any big bowls or any championships, but about Vanderbilt winning now 2 SEC games in a row.
Oh, yeah.
Beating Florida. And
that's true.
And, I told you off air, me and Matt Lowe do the preview every week here on the show. And we've talked about Vanderbilt all year. It's about how they look. Yes, they're not winning games. And look, they have a long way to go to get a more talented squad there. Clark Lee has a lot of work to do at Vanderbilt. But you can tell they're better than what they were last year. I think that's starting to show the last 2 weeks. I mean, honestly, they look like the better coached team Saturday than Florida.
Yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about it. I think they are. And again, I think really in Billy Napier's Florida's defense, he's got he's still purging the roster, trying to find the players that can play. And I think as good as Anthony Richardson is at times, he can be just as bad. I mean, we know he's got a lot of talent. I wonder how well he's reading defenses, though, is one thing. And he doesn't run the ball very often. And we all know he's very talented in that respect. So, but nevertheless, I agree with you on Vanderbilt. They have got much better if they can recruit a little bit better. But see, we all know, Phillip, the disadvantage is because of the academic standards at Vanderbilt. Now, I know some of those guys go, they put them through their sister school over there that allows them to get some in at a lesser GPA and standardized test scores. But they can't bring the whole team that way. So it's and I don't think a lot of those kids that signed with Vanderbilt, they don't sign there thinking they're going to get a pro contract. They sign there to get a good education and a degree from a highly regarded institution, and they're looking for a job right away that pays high salary. So hey, there's a place for them in the Southeastern Conference. It just galls me when I hear people say, "Oh, they ought not even be in here." Yeah, they should. They should be there because the Southeastern Conference needs that academic recognition as well as the football recognition.
Yeah, I agree with you. I've always been like that when people will say the same thing. Why do they got Vanderbilt? Get rid of them, bring somebody else in. Like, no, you do need a team like Vanderbilt. And look, I'll say this: football hasn't always worked out for them, but they have shown to be valuable in other sports. I know in football is the big thing. That's what everybody cares about. But the baseball team, the basketball team has had moments. I mean, their other sports have shown, value for the conference.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, all you had to do is look at the stadium. There was more Florida people there than there was Vanderbilt people there. Mm-hmm. I mean, one side was all blue, and the other side was about half full. And I had another good friend that was at that ball game that called me right after the game and said, and he's a Florida fan, and he said they had several busloads of fans that came up from Gainesville just for that ball game. So we know that Vanderbilt holds a place, and and I'm glad they're getting better. I really am. I really hope that they can keep somebody around long enough to turn that program around. Hey, James Franklin did it. He won 2 years in a row up there and had them in high profile bowl games. And of course he moved on to Penn State, but the fact is he was able to do it. So if one could do it, there ought to be an opportunity for some others to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of moving on, and I mean, we do this, we used to talk about the SEC, but you brought up TCU, and I thought the game was over when they didn't get the 2-point conversion, when the running back dropped it. But then when they got the ball back, I'm like, look, they got enough time here. I'm like, and TCU, this is what they've been doing all year anyways. They've been coming back in the second half of games, right, late in games, and these great comebacks. But just from a coaching standpoint, and Sonny Dykes was like, that's how we practice it and everything else. But the organization to pull that off, I mean, that's got to be a tough situation to pull off what they did at the end with the field goal.
You're absolutely right. I mean, how could you not count on somebody jumping off sides? I mean, there's 100 things, bad snap. I mean, 100 things could go wrong that we see, every week almost. But you're right. That just did not happen. It was too well orchestrated for them not to practice that on a regular basis. And I believe he said he run through it every Friday, just in preparation for that. Well, it sure showed. It paid off for him.
Yeah, because I'm watching the game. I've got that game on one TV. I've got the Florida Vanderbilt game on the other. And I'm watching. I see I was like, they did not just run the ball, in that moment.
Yes,
and I'm
they did.
What was going through your mind when you see that?
Well, I thought that's what they were normally doing. I was paying attention to the clock, but not really. I said, well, they just lined up to kick a field goal. And I looked at the time, and I said, surely not. But, yeah, they did. And they made it on top of that. They won the ball game.
Yeah, it was just it's an amazing situation to see in that. Just really one of those moments where, you're going to remember. And, I got to say, Sonny Dykes has done a really good job with them because they kind of felt like they were with Gary Patterson. They just were kind of just going along. They, the program seemed stagnant. I mean, just what he's done in 1 year, and with a quarterback that was the backup last year too. Yep.
Well, Sonny Dykes has been, he's had winning programs everywhere he's ever been. So I think he's a guy that pays extreme attention to detail. And those guys, he probably doesn't have a huge playbook, probably 8 or 10 running plays and, 5 or 6 passing plays, probably out of 6 or 8 different formations. And the guys can learn the system relatively easy. And now with a really distinct, defined practice time, you can't stay out there much more than 2 hours. You're going to exceed your 20-hour limit. So per week, count all the meetings they have, then I think he's maximized the system, what he's done. And I think, and I don't know how many people look into that and really think about that. But, those of us that know about technique and precision, that was almost a work of art to get those kids in there, set, snap, and kick the ball through the uprights.
Yeah, it's something that maybe Kentucky needs to look into because that was something I had an issue with toward the end of the Georgia game. And it just seems like when Georgia and Kentucky plays, now I feel like Kirby Smart and that team in the defense knows, okay, Kentucky's not going to score points on us. But Kentucky did a really good job, and they did that last year too as well. Defensively, they kind of do match up well with Georgia, just the kind of way they play, and then just hold them to 16, which it could have been 23-0. They hold them on the goal line. Just what were your takeaways from the Georgia-Kentucky game?
Well, I thought going in that it'd be a physical ball game. In fact, I've read somewhere where either Kirby or somebody had released something that Kentucky plays them tougher than anybody else physically, and that's what Georgia's all about. I mean, that they've got a pretty finesse offense, but their defense is nothing but physical with a front seven. It was last year, and it certainly is again this year. So I expect it to be, about that ball. I thought Georgia probably I think the line on that was 15 to 16 points. So, that's over 2 touchdowns. So I expect them to win and cover that. But the way it started was even worse, though. I thought Kentucky wasn't really ready to play as they did. And some of the play calling they used, I was a little questionable to me about when you got a quarterback that's, projected to be a first-round pick in the NFL next year, then you would expect a little bit more. But the running game was adequate. I thought they utilized their big running back, as probably as well as they could. But again, I think the play action off of that probably could have been a little bit better. I think he's a good rollout quarterback. He can get to the corner and still throw the ball. And I thought maybe they would have utilized that a little bit more against that defense, but they didn't. Not as much as I thought they would. But hey, Georgia was supposed to win it. They're the number one team in the country. They have been all year long. And I think now, of course, hindsight's always 20/20. You look back, and after all is said and done, the game probably turned out just probably the way it should have.
And for Kentucky, this has really just been a disappointing season coming in. Because like you said, the quarterback, Will Levis, this is a guy projected to be a first-round draft pick. Defensively, they're really good. I thought Kentucky had a chance at 9-10 wins this year. I going into the year, I picked them in second place in the SEC East. Now, I think a big part of what's been a struggle for them, their offensive line has not been as good as they've been in previous years.
Right.
Quarterback's been under pressure a lot. But what's been your takeaway from Kentucky this year? And I know Mark Stoops did over the weekend. He got a contract extension with Kentucky. They love him there. And I've always said this when it comes to him and Calipari basketball coach. If Calipari decided to leave Kentucky, they can go find another basketball coach because everybody would want to come to Kentucky to coach basketball. If Stoops leaves Kentucky, that hurts them more. Stoops, to me, is more valuable in that sense than Calipari with basketball, just because what Stoops has done with that team on the football program.
But now I agree with you, from what we know, because we watch them all the time. But evidently, the Board of Trustees, you do know Calipari has a lifetime contract there.
Mm-hmm.
It would, what it would take to buy him out? $50 million in cash.
Oh, I believe it.
I noticed it was obviously silent on the infield.
Yeah, I just remember little comments he made before football season and everything, talking about we're a basketball school, and him and Mark Stoops had a little Twitter disagreement on that situation. But this year for Kentucky, 6-5. They started 4-0, but they've lost 5 of their last 7 games. Just what's been your thoughts on them this year?
Well, again, Kentucky's not a whole lot different from schools like Ole Miss, Mississippi State. It's not getting 22 that can play. It's getting 40 that can play. Because if you're going to be competitive against championship teams like Georgia, and obviously the way Tennessee came on this year, you got to have guys that can play, full 60 minutes. That's the thing. Where they get beat most of the time, it did last week was a perfect example, is in that third and fourth quarter, because they don't have enough players that can play at that level. The substitute pattern is not very good because number 2s and number 3s aren't really capable of playing against somebody else's 1s and 2s. And that's the same thing I say about Mississippi State, Ole Miss, even Arkansas to a certain degree. We go right down to Kentucky. The team is right in that same category. Missouri is in that same deal. So, and I think that's where they are. And every year or two, or every 5 years, they're going to recruit well enough to get over the hump. But it's going to be short-lived. It'll be 1 year because if those kids are good enough to take a team like Kentucky old up to compete with champions, they're going to be recruited by other schools that are already there, the Alabamas and the Georgias and evidently Tennessee, what Florida used to be, what LSU's coming back to be. Those kids know that they got a chance to win a championship. Kentucky, I don't believe right now, if you roll it out there and tell me how many writers would say Kentucky would ever have a chance to win a national championship in football, I don't believe it is. I don't believe it's out there.
Another team that I think is obviously in South Carolina, and just What they did to Tennessee on Saturday night, I was just shocked. And think about it.
Yeah.
And Spencer Rattler, I mean, this is the quarterback everybody thought he was supposed to be at Oklahoma. When 5-star. Yep. I mean, he threw for 30 for 37, 438 yards, 6 touchdowns in the game. I'm just going to kind of give you an open canvas on this one. What happened?
Well, nobody knows. I mean, he was expected to do that every week. I mean, that before, remember preseason? I mean, everybody had him up there at South Carolina, riding his back, all the way up, to probably not to the SEC championship, but at least a winning season, maybe finish second or third, just because of his ability that he had shown before, of true 5-star quarterback that had already played in the big time at Oklahoma. Everybody started, but he didn't make the adjustment for whatever reason. I don't know whether it was a system. I don't know whether he wasn't real happy with the transition after he made it. There could be several reasons, but I guarantee you, whatever they were flushed out before Saturday night's game because he came to play, and he did.
Yeah, because coming into that game, on average this year, he was averaging throwing for 198 yards. He thrown 8 touchdowns and 9 interceptions. I mean, and with South Carolina every week previewing their games, I feel like the story is always turnovers. If they don't turn the ball over, take care of it. They've got, good players. Now, if you told me the final of this game was 63-38, I said, oh, yeah, Tennessee put 63 on South Carolina easy. Right. And then you flip it around. Oh, what happened, in your opinion, on the Tennessee side of things? Why did this thing go bad on them?
I don't know whether they were down. I don't know. That's hard to say. It didn't look like they were prepared for that offense for whatever reason. But, Rattler was giving them – he was making great calls. I don't know how many of those calls were checked at the line of scrimmage, but he was seeing something that was – he and the offensive coordinator was seeing something with that defense. And they were picking it apart, and they moved the ball around. They threw the ball. It wasn't just 1 or 2 wide receivers. I think he had 6 or 8 guys that had receptions in that ball game. So that told me it was the system that Tennessee was playing, the defensive schemes. But they were able to pick them up. And again, we know what the end results were. They got 63 scored on them. Tennessee did. And hats off to them. I'm ashamed being a Beaver fan. I think he's got all the ingredients to really. I don't be honest with you. I thought his name would probably surface, particularly in the Auburn job, but it never did. But somebody's going to pick him up in another year or two. He'll find a way to, he'll win 6 or 7. I think, kind of on a regular basis. He may have one good year. He could win 8 or 9. But look, you got to remember, Steve Spurrier was there. Lou Holtz was there. They didn't have much trouble winning 8 or 9 ball games every year. So I think Beaver could do the same thing.
And I'll tell you what, they're 7-4, and I know this is a big win, and they'll be going on the road to Clemson. But if Clemson better not think this is going to be an easy win for them, because if they do, South Carolina's probably got something for them.
Yeah, here's be the only thing though, having to come right back and go on the road to play Clemson is. How about the emotional? Can they get them back up again to play as tough as they did against Tennessee? That's almost impossible to do it 2 weeks in a row. I know that, a lot depends on the players in the system, but Phillip, I'm telling you, emotion in a huge game like that, you go into, to an opposing team's field, and Clemson's an SEC type team. That crowd will be, there'll be 80,000 there screaming the whole time. And sometimes that tends to wear down on the opposing team. I'd like to think they're going to go in there and do well, but if I had to bet tonight, I'll say Clemson wins by a couple of touchdowns at least.
Another surprising performance or result from Saturday night was what happened between Arkansas and Ole Miss. Now, I'll be honest, I picked Arkansas to win the game, but I did not think that was going to happen, where it was 35-6 at halftime, 42-27 the final score. Ole Miss made it look better during the fourth quarter. And just this whole performance, Arkansas ran the ball well, 232 yards from the running back Rocket Sanders. They had the quarterback back, KJ Jefferson. You look at Ole Miss, they put up yardage, but you look at the score. And going into this game, Was this a result of being a hangover effect from losing to Alabama the previous week? And of course, the Lane Kiffin rumors are out there, and he hasn't necessarily done a good job of throwing water on the fire when it comes to the talk of him and Auburn.
Well, if you ask me to bet on it tonight, Sunday afternoon he'll be in Auburn. I'm in Mississippi. I hear all the inside stuff. That's close to being a done deal. Now, I'm not saying this signed contract yet, but they're gonna give him what he wants, and he wants $100 million in 10 years, and Auburn's ready to give it to him. Now, that being said, that could have distracted him in preparation. But now you got to remember, Ole Miss had 740 yards total offense in that ballgame. He had two running backs that run for over 200 yards apiece in that one. Of course, the Sanders kid, I don't know how many of you listeners know that, but Sanders kid's the kid that transferred from Alabama. And don't think Alabama wouldn't love to have him back. In fact, Coach Saban, in his last week's conference call, or in his after game news press conference, said they'd love to have number 4 from Ole Miss, the Junction kid, who's, by the way, just came from right south of Montgomery, between Montgomery and Troy. And they looked at him but didn't take him. Well, he had 216 or something yards. The Evans kid had over 200. So, I mean, they, as you said, they made it a decent ball game, particularly in the fourth quarter. But they didn't do enough the first half, and that's obviously where they could not tackle the Sanders kid. I mean, I don't know what they saw in Ole Miss's defense, but that defensive front was opened up by the offensive line at Arkansas almost every snap. And that's why they was able to run up down the field, both with the quarterback situation and with Sanders as well.
And the thing with Arkansas is just amazing, and it's obvious that, I mean, as good as Sanders has been as a running back all year, and he's been awesome for them, but it all starts with KJ Jefferson. When he's on the field and when he's right, because I don't think he was healthy against Liberty. It just something didn't look right with him in that game. But when he's healthy and he's right and he's on the field, their offense, they're just a completely different team.
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to respect him because he'll pull it down and run when he's 240 pounds. Mm-hmm. And at short yardage, he'll run over a lot of defensive linemen. Even with his size, even when it's 300 pounds, he's got that momentum going, and they're not afraid to run him, and he's not afraid to check to his own number to run the ball. So I think that that means a lot. I don't know how good they are when he's not on the field. Obviously, the week he was hurt, not very good, not good enough to win. So it'll be interesting to see what they do in the offseason, trying to replace him from coming up this next year. So, it was. I thought Ole Miss had a real good shot to win that ball game by throwing it. Arkansas had been weak all year with their pass defense with the secondary. They'd had an injury factor back there. The talent level really wasn't what I think Coach Pittman was looking for. But it didn't work out for Ole Miss. It certainly worked out in Arkansas's favor, and hats off to him. Let's say this. I think if, in fact, what we are hearing is true, and Kiffin ends up at Auburn, I'm gonna blame that negotiation has happened that week before Arkansas, because I'm gonna say he got caught up in trying to figure out about his contract, even though he's got an agent that does that. He had to agree to it one way or the other, and if that's the case, I'm gonna blame that on the agent and Lane Kiffin for not paying attention to that team to play Arkansas.
And just a couple of games for this week. Of course, it's rivalry weekend. A lot of people, this is one of the most look forward to weekends in the season is rivalry weekend. All these rivals all over the country, not just in the SEC. But
sure.
The Egg Bowl on Thursday night. So, how do you see that one going? Because Mike Leach was not good in rivalry games at Washington State. I don't think he ever beat Washington. He lost pretty much every matchup with them, and then he's 0-2 against Ole Miss. But of course, Ole Miss now with the distractions to talk with Lane Kiffin, Auburn, it's getting hotter and harder with that conversation. Yep. What are your thoughts on the Egg Bowl on Thursday night?
Well, I think I like Ole Miss's chances in that, mainly because Kiffin has already figured out how to stop the passing game. He has that for 2 years. And Leach is not going to change the system. He's going to do now. Give him credit. The offense has gotten a little bit better, but if they're going to beat Ole Miss, they're going to have to run the football. They're not going to be able to beat them by throwing 50 times. I don't believe. Now, again, Ole Miss just can't, show up. They're playing in Oxford. They just can't show up and expect to win the ball game. They're going to have to play and play hard, and they're going to have to play for 60 minutes because they aren't going to give up. I think on the other side, if Mississippi State loses the third one in a row, I think Mike Leach is going to find himself on the hot seat as the season starts next year. I think he's got to produce. See, they still without an athletic director at Mississippi State. So depending on who they hire and how he looks at that, that the emphasis is going to be you got to beat your in-state rival. I mean, that's, we've heard that for years with Auburn, and they've not been able to do it consistently. They've done it a few times, but that's kind of the benchmark. So I don't know. I still think that regardless of what Kiffin does, I think the team itself has finally gotten together, and I think they'll play hard enough. I think they'll win that ball game in Oxford.
So this next question may sound like a silly question, but it's Alabama, so I'm going to ask it anyways. Does Auburn have any chance to beat Alabama on Saturday?
I think Alabama will have to lose the game. In other words, I think if they just, if theirs is on the emotional side. Auburn is on the emotional on a high. Alabama is still, I think, kind of moping around saying, hey, we can't win the SEC. We can't win the national championship as always is early projected this year. We know where we stand. The best thing we're going to do is get a bowl game, and there'll be some guys will check out of that and play, particularly the seniors. They won't go to the NFL. So I think this is their last shot to play. It is in Tuscaloosa, and I think the crowd will be into it. It is a mid-afternoon 2:30 ball game with CBS. That's their favorite time to play. So Alabama will have to give it away to lose. Auburn will play them hard. They'll be emotional, but they don't have the talent level. They don't have the coaching staff. All of that's in disarray, as you know. So I'm going to say Alabama, 25-point favorite or something like that, I believe. The line's already out. I don't know whether they'll win by that, but Alabama should win it, probably by at least 2 touchdowns.
And finally, before I let you go, before we get out of here for this week, this Thanksgiving. So, and I'm going to ask Matt Lowe this later on in the week too as well. What is your go-to dish? What is your favorite Thanksgiving dish, Coach?
I'm going to tell you, I love the chicken and dressing or turkey and dressing. I can eat a whole plate of that. And I got restaurants around North Mississippi. I know that serve that on certain days of the week throughout the year. I'll drive to Corinth, which is about 30 miles from my house, on a Friday for lunch, because they serve chicken and dressing every Friday in a couple of restaurants up there. And I'll drive up there just to get it. That's my favorite by far. And I don't like the canned jelly cranberry. I like the homemade cranberry sauce with the berries, and you cook them down and make a thick jelly out of that. And of course, my sides on that will be sweet potato casserole and green beans, and maybe one roll and a big old pitcher of sweet iced tea.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm glad with my day job we're not working Friday, because I'm going to need that to recover from what I'm going to do to my body on Thursday. That's just the thing with me.
Here's my comment. I'm going to eat myself into a coma.
Well,
I'm bad about that.
It is a great week. We'll have plenty of food, football, and all that good stuff this weekend. And, Coach, it's been fun once again having you on here this week. Happy Thanksgiving to you for this coming up week. And I look forward to recapping all these rivalry games with you next week and previewing the SEC Championship game.
Thank you so much, Phil. It's always my pleasure. You have a happy Thanksgiving also.
All right, once again, thanks to Coach Max Howell for coming on the show. A lot of good conversations there about what happened in college football this past weekend, particularly, as we say, in the SEC. And now we're going into rivalry weekend, which no picks here. We'll do that on Wednesday afternoon with Matt Lowe. That's coming at you a day early, so you're kind of getting back-to-back days with podcasts just because Thanksgiving is on Thursday. me and Matt will record on Tuesday evening. We usually record that on Wednesday evenings, but we're going to do it on Tuesday. And actually, we'll do it because Matt covers Auburn basketball for Field Level Media. So we'll do it when the Auburn basketball game's over. We'll record that. So I can probably get Matt's thoughts on Auburn hoops too, as well as we head into that conversation. But anyways, to kind of close this thing out, this weekend in college football was quite interesting. We talked about that with Coach Howell. So we did talk about big win by USC over UCLA, just a shootout of a game between those two. And not, like I said, not any defense whatsoever when those two teams got together, which I was kind of really expecting that when those two teams got together this past week. I would have been disappointed if not. USC winning 48-45. They are 10-1 on the year. Looking at the stats on this game, 470 passing yards for USC, 309 for UCLA. UCLA had 204 yards on the ground. USC had 179. It was just a back and forth game. Now, UCLA had 4 turnovers in the game. Not a lot of punting in this one, as well as with that score you would expect. 1 punt for USC in the game, and it was late in the game before we finally did see a punt in the game, and then there was 2 for UCLA. So, and I'll bring that up with Tennessee losing. Because really with Tennessee, they were in a good position. Last week, they beat Missouri. And then this week, you said, okay, they play South Carolina. And when we previewed this game with Matt Lowe last week, didn't really put much conversation into it. You just figured, okay, Tennessee takes care of business in this one. And that's it. Tennessee wins. They go to 10-1. They'll play Vanderbilt next week. They'll go 11-1. They are sitting good. Georgia has to play an SEC championship game. You assume they beat LSU, but they'll play in that championship game. Georgia wins there. And then the Ohio State-Michigan game is this week. So someone would get eliminated there, especially if Michigan is to lose there just because their non-conference schedule is very, very weak. Ohio State has a better argument as a one-loss team if they lose a close game to Michigan than Michigan would if they lost a close game. And then you got TCU there. They play Iowa State this week. Then they have Kansas State. Is looking like in the Big 12 championship game. That's where it would be right now. So look at Tennessee. If you would take care of business this week against South Carolina, which they didn't, beat Vanderbilt, you're 11-1. You're sitting good. You should get in. 2 SEC teams get in. Well, now with Tennessee losing to South Carolina, Hendon Hooker out for the year. Tennessee's looking at best 10-2. We'll see what happens. Vanderbilt's won 2 in a row. I don't think Vanderbilt wins against Tennessee this Saturday, but we'll see how that one goes. So now you look at who's in the best positions now to get into the playoff. So when you look at that court, Georgia took care of Kentucky. We talked about that. 16-6 over Kentucky. Ohio State and Michigan escaped their games. Ohio State played Maryland. They had a 2-touchdown lead. Maryland did fight back in that game to come back, and then Ohio State pulled away. And then Michigan needed a late field goal over Illinois to win there. Both teams won close games. TCU, we talked about that with Coach. Just a crazy finish there at the end. The fire drill, get the kick. Okay, so those are 4. Those 4 teams still won. But like I said, Tennessee lost at 9-1. Then you got LSU sitting at 6, and then USC sitting there at 7. Like I said, if you had to ask me now, I think Georgia beats LSU. So that puts 3 losses on LSU. You kick them out. You've got USC now. They're 7 right now. We'll see where they're at. Obviously, these teams are going to make a leap. USC is in a very good spot now. They play Notre Dame this week, which won't be easy, but that's a Notre Dame team going into the weekend ranked 18th in the college football playoff rankings. And then you have to play in the Pac-12 championship game. Now, they don't know who that's going to be. It will either be Oregon or Washington. If Oregon beats Oregon State this week, then Oregon goes to the Pac-12 championship game. But if they lose and Washington beats Washington State, Washington will be going to that game. So then that's a top 25 team there as well. So you're looking at USC, I think their resume is better than Ohio State or Michigan, whoever loses that game. So once again, especially if it's Michigan with the 1 loss. Clemson's also in a good spot now with one loss. Now they play South Carolina this weekend, as you just heard, Coach. Can South Carolina get emotionally high once again like they did against Tennessee? We'll see. That's going to be hard for them to do. So then Clemson gets through that. Then they play North Carolina team, which I take a little hit because they lost to Georgia Tech. If North Carolina goes at least 10-2, they're a top 25 team. That's another win. And it's not a given with USC either. I mean, you're looking at a team, you got to play Notre Dame, and you got to play either Washington or Oregon in the Pac-12 championship game, which is not going to be easy. And we've seen that USC defense struggle. So now that's USC and Clemson are now in position to potentially get in. And I'm just going to throw it out there. I don't want to alarm many people, but what if both those teams lose? And what if, like I expect a lot of people, Georgia beat LSU, so it knocks LSU out. Currently right now in the rankings, you've got Alabama. They were 7 in the rankings, in the playoff rankings this past week. Let me double check as we talk about this on the rankings. Alabama's 8th. You've got LSU at 6. Okay. You've got Tennessee, which they're going to drop. LSU at 6, USC 7, Alabama 8, Clemson 9. If USC and Clemson take losses, you've got a 2-loss Alabama team, potentially. They could be 10-2. But they, other than Ole Miss, they don't have a top 20 victory versus a 1-loss Michigan or a 1-loss Ohio State. I would think the 1-loss Michigan or 1-loss Ohio State gets in, especially the loser loses that close game in the big game this Saturday. But will there be people try to push hard? Alabama should be that team to get in. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting because it's very possible Clemson and USC could both lose another game in these next 2 weeks. It's very possible because of the competition they're playing. And I said going in last week when North Carolina and Clemson clinched their spots in the ACC championship game, I've already threw my pick out there. I thought North Carolina would beat Clemson. I'm starting to rethink that after the loss of Georgia Tech. We'll see how this Saturday goes with Clemson playing South Carolina. And then on Friday, North Carolina playing NC State. We'll see how that goes. But it's going to be interesting. We'll see. We're in there the last 2 weeks. It's going to be interesting. We'll be back on Wednesday afternoon. The preview podcast will go up not Thursday morning when it usually does. Now that one we will have video. You'll get to see me and Matt if you're checking out on YouTube. I appreciate everybody checking out the show. Now the show went long, had a long open, which I don't do a lot of opens anymore on the show, but with the news, I figured it was time to do that. It was a good opportunity to do that. And, of course, Coach Howell. Awesome. A legend. I always appreciate him taking the time coming on the show. And anyways, I'm going to get out of here. You can follow me on social media at PJordanSEC. Podcast is available on all your favorite podcast platforms, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're on Apple Podcasts, please follow, rate, and review. Really means a lot. When you do that, leave a review. I will read it on a future edition of the show. Check it out on YouTube at the Phillip Jordan YouTube channel. I'm going to soon change that channel to Phillip Jordan Show, so you'll be able to find it that way. Like I said, please subscribe, hit the bell for all notifications, leave a comment on the video. I will read that on a future edition as well. And also, you can email me at sports.philipjordan@gmail.com. I hope everybody has a great day. Talk to you Wednesday afternoon when me and Matt Lowe pick all the games. And you've been listening to the Phillip Jordan Show.